The Empire was one of the most evil regimes the galaxy ever endured, fielding vast armies of indoctrinated minions to squash even the slightest trace of resistance. From the rank and files of the Imperial Army to the elite Imperial Stormtroopers, the Empire's soldiers were some of the most well-trained and brutal in galactic history. But how did they get so skilled and so cruel? How did the Empire train its recruits? In this video, we'll tell you the secrets of the Empire's training academies, as well as the horrors they subjected their recruits to.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Empire inherited a lot of already prestigious military academies from the Republic. Many of these institutions were thousands of years old, while others had been hurriedly founded during the Clone Wars when the Republic military was re-established. The Empire's academies varied wildly in who they trained and how they trained them. Some academies were pretty mundane, like the Kuralag Academy, while others were nightmarish establishments that scarred recruits for life, those who survived anyway. The first academy we'll discuss today wasn't too horrific, but it had a few creepy traditions that we think makes it worth mentioning. This was the legendary Prefsbelt Academy, formerly known as the Imperial Naval Academy, since its location on Prefsbelt 4 was classified despite everyone and their mother knowing where it was. The Prefsbelt Academy was over 10,000 years old and founded by Pers Predu, the father of the post-Pius Dia Republic Navy. It was built on 12 peaks, each named after famous naval battles of old, so the site was steeped in history. Virtually every famous Republic or Imperial naval officer studied at Prefsbelt, and from them, thousands of weird traditions arose. The weirdest, and the reason we're giving Prefsbelt a mention here, happened during graduation ceremonies. In the middle of Naval Academy graduations, new midshipmen would march in complete silence down a kilometers-long passage to the crypt where Pers Predu was entombed. There, they would graduate and dedicate themselves to the new naval service over Predu's tomb, following which they received their assignments. Prefsbelt Academy was certainly weird, but that ceremony was nothing compared to what other Imperial Academies put their trainees through. Consider Rythal Academy, which trained recruits to serve in the Imperial Army. Where Prefsbelt put its trainees through a culty ceremony, Rythal subjected them to a year-long program of pain and suffering, just like most real-world high schools. Notable parts of the Rythal Academy's training regimen included over 1,000 hours spent in tactical simulators, extensive indoctrination into the Empire's New Order ideology, and even live fire exercises, during which trainee teams often took casualties. In particular, Rythal recruits had to survive a mock siege for 16 days straight and a week in simulated interrogation, a particularly notorious part of the program that many recruits didn't survive. Keep in mind that these recruits weren't even special, they were being trained for the Imperial Army, not any of the more elite units. Recruits for those suffered even worse. Recruits meant for the Stormtrooper Corps trained at the Academy of Carida, nicknamed Cliffside Academy due to its location on, well, a cliffside. Unlike the secretive Prefsbelt Academy, the Carida Academy was public knowledge. Indeed, it pretty much defined Carida as a planet. Carida's moon, appropriately nicknamed the Mascot Moon, even had the logo of the Carida Academy carved into it. This could be seen from the Academy until 8 BBY, when a Mad Lad recruit tried to blow up the seal with some stolen antimatter as a prank, only to accidentally blow up the entire moon. Carida's 2-year Stormtrooper training program was infamous for its brutality. Indoctrination at the Academy was particularly extreme, with cadets stripped of every facet of their individuality, names including, with the goal of turning them into empty vessels for the Emperor's will. Recruits at Carida were expected to suppress all emotion as a form of self-discipline, with even the slightest display of feeling punished with torture at the hand of the Academy's staff. But it wasn't just those who failed who were tortured. Instructors at the Academy of Carida regularly used suffering as a training tool as well as a punishment. Recruits were deliberately deprived of sleep for extended periods, pushing them to the brink of sanity and physical capability. Live fire exercises were common at the Carida Academy, so much so that every major arms dealer in the galaxy had a facility on Carida to supply experimental weapons for Stormtrooper hopefuls. Live fire training was also conducted for desert and underwater warfare scenarios, wilderness survival and unarmed combat, which pushed recruits to the extremes. At the Carida Academy, most recruits were sent to the medical bay at least once. Some washed out due to the sheer intensity of the training, while others died during exercises, much like at Rythal. At the end of their training, prospective stormtroopers were assigned an Omega mission, a live fire challenge that weeded out any last stragglers that were deemed too weak to be stormtroopers. Even the graduation ceremony at Carida Academy was potentially deadly. The ceremony involved an elaborate march across the academy grounds, and since the academy was located at the top of a 500-foot cliff, this meant prospective stormtroopers were marching right on the edge of an abyss. Graduates had to march in a tight formation that left no margin for error. If commanders failed to shout orders to turn at the right moment, or the cadets failed to stop in time, some of the would-be graduates would step from the edge and plummet to their deaths. By 1 BBY, 36 cadets had died in this manner. Fortunately, that was where the cruelties of the Carida Academy ended. After the march, the graduates were treated to a nice ceremony that, unlike at Prefspelt, didn't involve any weird rituals. All told, Carida Academy's Cliffside March was a pleasant graduation ceremony compared to what the Empire's most brutal training facility had in store for recruits. The Empire's most horrific training facility was also its most secretive. Located on desolate, obscure Yinshaw, this was the Imperial Royal Guard Academy, the camp which trained the Empire's most elite. Despite training only the best of the best, the Royal Guard Academy wasn't nearly as prestigious as the other Imperial Academies we've discussed today. Those who knew about it spoke of the Royal Guard Academy with fear, knowing only that it was a terrible place that few recruits were sent to and that few left alive. As you might expect from the name, the Royal Guard Academy trained recruits to serve as one of Emperor Palpatine's personal guards. Trainees at the Yinshaw Academy went through everything the Carida recruits endured and worse, suffering through immense physical torment, indoctrination, destruction of the self, and long-term deprivation. Sparring was a major part of the training regimen on Yinshaw, with recruits often pitted against each other to hone their skills. For some exercises, trainees fought alone, while for others, they fought in pairs, ensuring they knew both how to rely on others and themselves. What made the Yinshaw Academy so brutal was less the training and more the steep price of failure. There was no expulsion or washing out on Yinshaw. Recruits who failed were simply killed. Since most of the Yinshaw Academy's training regimen involved sparring between recruits, this meant the vast majority of any given class was guaranteed an execution, with the training regimen slowly weeding out the weak until, after a full year of brutality, only the best of the best remained. Sometimes, not even the best was safe. One year, when Darth Vader paid a visit to the Yinshaw Academy, he selected the best trainee and killed him to prove that not even the best warriors were a match for the power of the Force. At the end of the Yinshaw Academy's training regimen, the surviving recruits were subjected to one final test, which the Emperor personally oversaw. This final test was a free-for-all fight to the death in an arena called the Squall, which featured many deep pits for trainees to fall into. Only a handful of the trainees would survive this final test, following which they would swear unconditional obedience to the Emperor and become Royal Guards. The worst part about this is that most Yinshaw Academy trainees didn't even sign up to join. They were recruited from the ranks of the Stormtrooper Corps' top squads and essentially forced into this nightmare. Now that's cruel. They don't do military training like they did in the old days. The damn young people of today just don't have the guts to die in training for no good reason. But what do you think? If you had to choose, would you rather die at Carida or Yinshaw? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.